Sige, by 8:40, magsugod na ta. Dayon, apas lang ang uban. Okay, sige. Shall we start na? Okay lang. Tas makita ra ninyo akong screen?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Sige. I will just give one example per each type of one, no? I mean, each type of kind of proof. Then the rest, I'll just let you do the exercises. Okay. Um, so we are done with direct proof. Um, we will just start with the what's this? Um, we will just start with the uh, indirect proof, no? Proof by contraposition. Dili lang ako i-full screen class, no, para dali ra ko mag-altab. Uh, Dali ra nako if mag kuha sa solution, dali ra.
Okay, sir.
Okay. When you say proof by contraposition or proof by indirect proof, actually mo ning baliskad sa direct proof, no? Baliskad na method sa direct proof. Okay. The concept behind indirect proof is that uh, ato bitaw, if we try to recall, the your lesson sa logic about conditional statement, no? If the conditional statement is true, then it's contrapositive. So mo nang contraposition, no? If it's contrapositive, is also true. So if P implies Q, then it will follow not Q implies not P. No? If P implies Q, it will follow not Q implies not P. So in the proof by contraposition, so in here we are going to make our conclusion false, no? Conclusion na to false, which is Q, then not Q. Then we will try to find a way that our hypothesis will also become false. So if false then false, then you can say that the original statement that we have is a true statement, no? So kung i-false na to ang conclusion, unya mo arrive na sa hypothesis nato nga false also, then we can say that kung atong baliskar balik ang kuan statement, then we can say that the original statement is also true. So let's try this one, no? Let's try this one. No? If n is an integer, then 3n plus 2 is odd, then n is odd. Okay, so what is that statement? If n is an integer and 3n plus 2 is odd, then n is okay. Makita ra ninyo akong text.
Dili kayo, sir.
Dili
Naman kayo,
kayo.
sir.
Kano mura siya na zoom in ra kay siya, sir.
Zoom in ra kayo.
Yes, sir.
Hindi ka may ibabaw. Sa if inani or pag sa
Naay part sir nga dili makita sir.
Medyo halap yung diri dapit no tungod sa ink na.
Yes sir.
Wait lang, ah. Itas ng ballpen. So to, if n plus 2 is odd, then n is odd. Dili baliskad akong text sa ideo class or baliskad?
Dili man,
Dili.
sir.
Dili sir.
Okay, sa ako ra din eh. Anyway, um, so sa contrapositive, no, if ano na to, if contrapositive, so i-assume na to that the conclusion is false. Then we have to find out that our hypothesis atong P na to, so moment nila, if P then Q. So ato i-assume that Q is false. Then we have to find out that ang atong P, which is the hypothesis, will also be false, no? So what will be our assumption here? So if we let our conclusion Q is false, so unsa may atong assumption ani? So we will let n be,
Be
so kung
the odd.
so kung atong conclusion is false, so what will be our assumption? Let be n odd ba gyapon? False man nato siya.
Even.
Integer sir.
Okay, even. So we will make this even.
Given.
Okay. So let n be even. So kung n nato is even, so by definition sa even, we can write n is equal to, so ito yung definition sa even,
Divisible by 2.
divisible by 2. So we can write it in the form, sa form sa even. Kung add kay 2k plus 1 man, di ba? So kung
2
even,
plus 1 over 2.
Ha?
so go back sa definition sa even of odd. So kung even, we can write uh, n is equal to, kung add kay 2k plus 1 man, di ba? So ang n nato, kung even siya, we can write divisible by 2 man. So we have a multiple by 2 times,
And
okay, k. So okay.
I
Pwede
K
mo pwede mo maggamit o any
Oh,
type of letter, ha? You can use any type of letter. Kung ganahan mo A, okay, 2A, or ganahan mo B, ano? So I will just use K direct eh. Murag na, mao man gyud akong naandan K, no? So may naandan ako K. So we have to we have to define that K, where K is, unsa man dapat yung K? Dapat kung integer ang n, dapat si K would also is also a
odd. Odd siya sir?
odd.
Oh, ayun.
Dapat unsa man. Kaya atong kuan na ba dito sa atong premise is if n is an integer, so dapat si k should be also an integer, di ba? So kung n nato is integer, so ato po i-define na si k is also an integer. Diba? Kay kung dili sa integer, let's say, kung sa may number nga dili integer, let's say, 1/3. So, 2 times 1/3, 2/3. Kaingon ba ta nga even si Kwan? Ka-even si 2/3. Wala may even nga fraction, di ba?
Yes, sir.
So, we have to
Mm-hmm.
define that kaning k is also an integer. Okay, kung kakita mo ng symbol nga z nga i-double, no? Murag double z man itawag ano. We call that as kuan, integer. Anyway, class, igna lang to nung katong wala naka-join. This is recorded. So, kuan, I can post this later ang kaning video. Uh, their disadvantage, dili sila makapangutana if naay pangutana dili, no? At least you are here. If you have some question, at least you can ask some questions. No? Okay, so ano no? So we define kay even man si n, we can write n is equal to 2k, where k is an integer. No? K is an element of the set of integer, or in simple terms, k is an integer. No? Kung di mo ganag, okay, if kung maglibog mong symbol, okay, you can write it formally, no? Isulat niyo tanan, literally. You can say, k is an integer. No? So, we will go back na dayon. Ani, we will go back to the statement 3n plus 2. No? So, thus, 3n plus 2 is equal. Okay. So, we have to find out, di ba, kay kung i-false na to itong conclusion, dapat itong hypothesis P would also be false. No? So, dapat we have to prove that kung to make this false, dapat kung ang first statement na to is false, add siya, dapat we have to prove that 3n plus 2 is even. Di ba? Dapat ma-even ni siya para ma-false ni siya dire. So, kung atong result dire add, so ang atong proof dili siya valid, di ba? Okay, so we have to show na kani atong if atong i-false ang conclusion, atong hypothesis would also be false also. So kung ato ning gi-even dire, kung ato ning gi-even ang atong conclusion, dapat mo even pod sa atong hypothesis, no? So kay nakasud tag even dire, dapat mo result tag even dire. Okay. So how are we going to prove that 3n plus 2 would be even? Di ba? So we know that n, pila ito yung n na to? What is our n in our previous line?
2K.
Okay.
Okay, 2k, very good. So we will write 3 times 2k plus 2. Tama ba?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
So, saan nato ni siya pag-show nga even po di siya. So, ato sa i-simplify, no? Ano? So, ato i-simplify, we have 3 times 2k, we have 6k plus 2. Tama ba?
Sir.
So, to make this even, di ba, kung saan ito yung definition sa even, dapat we can write it in a form na 2k yapon siya. So, regardless, okay, pwede ning k here, sa last, no? Pwede ang k here is an expression. Pwede say 2 times x plus 1, so we can say that is also even, or we can say 2 times a squared plus 3x plus 4. As long as siya multiple of 2 and an expression, let's say you have a multiple of 2 and an expression, we can say that one is even. Pero kung naa siya sobrang, if let us say, I can have 2k squared plus 3x plus 4, kung nasa sobrang plus 1, okay, this expression here, we can say, odd ni siya, no? So, a k here could be a variable or could be an expression. So, let's go back to our problem. Let's go back to our problem. Okay, how are we going to write 6k plus 2 that it makes it even? So, dapat ganito. So, dapat na siya an expression with a multiple of 2. So, saan man nato ni? Mahimo ni siyang even. Kani si 6k plus 2. So, what should be factored out here? Para makaingon tag even siya. I need ang PDF. Aban itong rahinay. Hello, madunggan na ko ninyo, class.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Sir.
Puro din, di ka dungo. Yan na sa akong volume. Okay, sige. Balik na. So, kung saan na to din siya pag-express, kani nga expression, na mahimo siyang even. Kani siya. So, di ba kay, ang even, you can multiply any expression basta naa siya multiple of 2, no? So, unsa kaya ito factor out ani? So, factor out 2,
3k plus 1.
3k plus 1, okay. 3k plus 1. So, we can have here 2 times an expression. So, 2 times an expression. So, therefore, kana siya, no? Kana siya, we can say that this is what? So, what can we say about 3n plus 2? Therefore, 3n plus 2, di ba, we can write 2 times an expression. So, unsa man na siya? Is that an even or an odd number?
Even?
Even, sir.
Even. So, therefore, 3n plus 2 is even. Therefore, wala pa. Thus, ang atong statement, if we go back sa katong statement nato here, so nang ano nag-end of proof na ko. Wait lang Hindi pa ko mag-therefore. So therefore, kay ang atong sorry dili pa ko dapat mag-therefore. So therefore, kay na if we assume na false ang hypothesis, then we found out that we assume false ang conclusion, which is odd, we make it even, then we have proven that the hypothesis is also false, in which we found out that 3n plus 2 is even. So what would be our conclusion? Therefore, if 3n plus 2 is odd, prove ba niya nga statement? Then,
False.
so by contraposition, so we can say by, dili ko na lang contraposition, therefore, if 3n plus 2 is odd, then n is also odd. No? So, ang atong statement, kanihong statement is really true statement. Ano? Okay, question about proof by contraposition. Ang lisod ra ba sa o ano? Ang lisod sa pag-prove is ang pagsugod. That is the most difficult part. Kay if kung kabalo na ka musugod, the rest mo is continuous na.
Kuha lang sir, galibog lang ko sa kanang pag-determine sa even ug sa odd.
Yeah. Ang even, let's say, actually in kuan, in terms of expression naman na siya, no? So kung mo factor out ka, let's say, 2x squared plus 2x plus 5, say kanino? Kung i-factor out nimo ni siya og 2, di ba, unsa may i-factor out og 2 nimo? So na kay 2 times x squared plus 2 x. Kani kinamay sobra, di ba? Kani siya sobra, no? So we have plus 1. This is 4 plus 2. So kung naka-write ka nani nga expression, 2 times an expression plus 1, ana siya, that is, sorry. Okay, balik. Kasi kani nga expression, no? 2x squared
Plus 2x.
plus 2x plus 5. So di ba kung i-factor out nato ni kung 2, we have x squared plus x plus 2. Okay, 4 man ni, di ba? May extra nga 1. Gipagawas tong extra nga 1. So we can write an expression 2 times an expression plus 1. Kani siya, odd na siya. No? This means that this expression is an odd number. Pero let's say, 4x plus 8. Ano 4x plus 8. Kung i-factor out nimo ni siya og 2, factor out og 2. So 2 times 2x plus 4.
4.
Diba? So nakay factor of 2 times an expression. Pero wala extra nga plus 1.
So,
Wala extra nga plus 1.
mao na siyang even sir.
So mo ni siya ang even.
Okay.
So mo na siya ang even. Wala plus 1. Pero naay expression class that could not be considered as either even or odd. No? Naay mga expression nga dili na to ma-express in terms of even or odd. Let's say for example, 3x for example, no? Kani siya, it could be even or it could be odd. Why? Hindi man na siya ma-factor og 2. Di ba? Dili ma-factor og 2, di ba?
Yes sir.
So dapat kay 2k. So we have 2k, 2 times an expression of k. So k is any variable or expression. So, it's not, it could be even or it could be odd. Ana sa explanation ana. So kato, no? So actually, ang proving is mura ra kagadula-dula, no? So all you have to do is you are just playing with the variables. No? So depende na lang sa inyo how creative are you sa ako ninyo pagsulat sa proof. As long as logical ang inyong pag-write sa proof, as long as logical ang pag-write sa proof, and as long as kaning walay na-violate nga step or walay na-violate na principle, then that would be fine, class, no? So, pwede na kayo maglahi-lahi of proof, no? As long as kuha lang, ang process is correct. Pero in proving, careful lang sa proving. Bawal yun ang skip. Logical manggod ang proving. So, dapat step by step siya. So, if this step, this should be the next step, should be the next step. So, walay shortcut. Dili pwede mo shortcut kay again, ang proving is based on logic. Okay? Uh, Class, sa inyong module, no, kay wala kayo gitakol ang proving, I included kaning methods of proof because this is very important, because this is the main lesson why you do logic. So, mo ni siya ang heart sa subject. No? Sa part sa logic nga part, first part, no, ang heart sa subject na logic is ang proving. Murag ambot anong wala gi-appeal sa inyong module, depende mo na sa writer. Anyway, ato na lang ato na lang i-add. Dayon maybe naamgay uban dadto class mo na murag dili na kayo necessary sa especially sa inyong P3 nga part. Dili na kayo siguro nato humano ning logic nga subject. Taman na siguro gyud ta sa function katubit ang proving sa subjective, bijective, katora sa function na ta. The rest of the topic dili na tapilon. Okay. Other question about proof by contraposition?
None so far.
And so far. Okay na, makaya-kaya na.
Kaya ra gaway, sir.
Sige, pang-assign ta mo, unya, tagsa-tagsaon ta mo, no? Atong part. Ipa-assign ta mo og isang problem. Okay. Sa balik sa ko sa screen mo. Okay. So we are done with proof by contraposition. Okay, you can try this one, no, later, no? You can as your exercises. Okay, this is already provided in your so ito gani sa inyong page, and there are still more exercises, no? Okay, balita. Prof tanon. So next is proof by contradiction. So in proof by contradiction, in this statement, no, you are going to assume the whole the whole conjecture or the whole statement as a false statement. So sa proof by contradiction, sa proof by contraposition, katura mo conclusion ang inyong ano, ang conclusion ninyo ang inyong assume na false para i-prove ninyo ang hypothesis to be false. In proof by contradiction, you are going to assume, no? You are going to assume na ang whole statement or ang whole conjecture to be false. Dayon, what will happen? So you look onto the statement R and not R to show the contradiction. So the meaning here is that you are going to look for a statement nga kaning statement dili siya pwede ma-false. Yun. So assume nimo sa proof by contradiction, i-assume nimo nga false siya, pero imong i-prove nga dili siya pwede ma-false. So therefore, true siyang statement. Nakuha ninyo? So ano no? I-assume nimo siya nga false, pero i-show ninyo nga dili siya pwede ma-false. Ba? Murag abuangon man taning logic no. Murag kung i-prove ninyo si Sir Marco nga gwapo, pero mangita mo paagi nga dili siya pwede magwapo. O kung ganon ba? No? So, let's have an example, no? We can perform this using an example. Let's say, for example, kani next day. Okay, let us show that at least 4 of any 22 days must fall on the same day. You know? Show that at least 4 of any 22 days must fall on the same day. Okay, so let's show. Okay, sige. So we have to show that at least for any 22 days must fall on the same day. Okay. So to prove this one, ato sa ning false statement. So what will be our assumption? So how are we going to make this false? So we will say we will let so saan na to ni pagkuan false. So we are just going to negate the statement, no? So to make this false, we are going to negate this. So we could say at least any 22 days do not fall on the same day. So at least of any 22 days do not fall on the same day. So this is our assumption. So we are going, so saan nito? If mag-assume ka nga false siya, dayon i-show nimo nga dili siya pwede ma-false. So unsaon nato ni siya nga ma-disprove ni atong assumption nga dili gini siya pwede nga false gini siya, no? Nga kato atong previous is correct, kani siya is wrong. So we are going to assume, so unsa may day karon? Let us say we will assume we will let April man ta karon ba?
April 9.
April 1 na lang.
Sige.
April 1 will lie on sa maning kwan will lie on sige date karon Friday, no?
Yes, sir.
So, Friday. So, April 1. Oh, that will be the first day. So, if April 1,
Sir, wala na siya 4.
asay 4,
At ang nakabutang mga dito kay show at least 4 of any 22 days
at
not
least
fall on
4. Sorry, at least 4. At least 4, no?
Oo.
At least 4 do not fall. Oh. So, if April 1 is Friday, so if April 1 is Friday, so unsa may next Friday na to?
9.
Okay,
Sir.
April 9 is also Friday. Unsa pa yung next Friday na to? April, April 9 ba? April 8, uy. Uy, dahil April 15,
15, sir.
15 is also
Friday.
Friday. Dayon,
22, sir.
April 22. So at least 4 man, di ba?
Yes, sir.
So ingon sa at least 4. At least 4 do not fall on the same day. Dabi kay ang per 22 days na amay upat. So at least 4. Qualify ra siya, di ba? So therefore, contradiction wala. Nag-contradict ba ang atong solution sa atong hypothesis, sa atong assumption?
Wala.
Nag-contradict ba sa ani? Ang atong assumption is at least 4 of any 22 days do not fall on the same day.
Ano?
Wala, sir.
Do not fall man. Kunya diri kay upat man lagi ni diri.
Ay, oh.
Wala.
Contradiction wala.
Naa.
Ay, naa, sir.
So nag-contradict. So na contradiction. So dili gid siya pwede ma-false. Di ba? So
Yes.
ang atong kuan, atong gi-assume nga false pero dili siya pwede ma-false. So therefore, hence we have, so butang na to, hence a contradiction. Anong contradiction man? Since, okay, unsa may nag-contradict ani? There are 4 days on 22 days lie on
Friday.
Friday. So there are 4 days on 22 days that lie on Friday. So, contradiction siya. So actually, pwede na ka mo stop diya, no? Mag-end of proof, pero sa atong naandan, no? We have to conclude, no? So therefore, at least um, any 22 days fall on the same day. Fall on the same day. Okay, putangan din nato og pinaka-importante sa tanan before mag-end sa proof.
Itong square. Ito to.
Kani siya nga symbol, no? Worth 20 points. So, if mauman kag proof, putangan na nimo end of an argument, no? Okay. So ana lang. So that is proof by contradiction, no? So assume ka nga false ang statement, pag itaan nimo paagi nga dili siya false. Ano? Okay, question about proof by contradiction.
None, sir.
Na,
Wala, sir.
wala na.
Okay na.
You can also, ano, kani, you can also try this one. Why, by using contradiction, y square root of 2 is irrational. This is a common proof. Na mo'y proof ani sa inyong history. I guess you can recall your history of math. Namor na ni sa inyong history of math.
Mm, contradiction gyapon na, sir.
Oh, proof by contradiction. It was shown by Pythagoras, siguro. Polished by kinsa kay ito nga one, kinsa nag-polish ani nga proof. Anyway, ano, ang proof ani is using proof by contradiction. So just recall your history of math sa iyang proof ani. Okay, you can also use this one, no? You can also try this one and also this one, the rest. Okay. Kani importante gyapon ni, no? Proof by kaning conditional statement. Kaning if and only if. Okay. Plus if mag-prove ka og by conditional statement, so usually ang atong proof is in one direction, no? In one direction. Pero ang by conditional statement, when you are going to prove this one, you are going to prove this in both direction. So if n is odd, if and only if n squared is odd, so when you are going to prove this one, first you have to prove if n is odd, then n squared is odd. Ano, no? Then ang next dayon, you are going to prove if n squared is odd, then n is odd. Yan. So parang dua ka direction. So you are going to prove first P implies Q, then prove again Q implies P. No? So that it actually the same gyapon to the previous. You can make use of the uh, three types of proof katong kaganina, direct, indirect, and proof by contradiction, to prove this one. Only that you are going to anang prove in both two directions. Sige, atong ikuha, no? Let us try this one, no? So, let's say if n, ano, n is odd, if and only if n is okay, n is odd if and only if n squared is odd. So, if natin by conditional statement, so first, you are going to prove sa P implies Q. First, no? So, first proof. Tangi mo, if n is odd, then n squared is odd. Okay. So, what will be our assumption? So, you can use any methods of proof, direct proof, indirect proof, or proof by contradiction. For this example, we will just make use of direct proof, no? So, kung direct proof, so atong assumption si atong hypothesis. So, what is our hypothesis here? So, we will let n is sa kaning P implies Q. Sorry, implies. So, if n is odd, then n squared is odd. So, atong hypothesis here is n is odd, di ba? So, what will be our assumption here? Let n be
Odd.
odd. Okay, very good. So, let n be odd. So, kay si n nato ay odd man, so we can write n is equal to, unsa ito yung definition sa n, odd number?
2k plus 1.
2k plus 1. Butangan lang natin kung ano, where k is an integer. Ito lang kumpletuhan, where k is an integer. Okay. So next tayo, so n squared man to, no? So we have to show that n squared is odd. So we will have n squared. So, unsa gito tong n? We have 2k plus 1 man to, no?
Yes, sir.
So, 2k plus 1 also squared. Okay? So, ato ni i-expand. So, when we expand 2k plus 1 then squared, so unsa ganin ni siya? We have
4k
4k
squared
squared.
plus 4k
4k
plus 1.
plus 4 plus 1.
No? So, we have to show that n squared is also odd. Okay, how are we going to write this expression? Ano siya, no? Na ma-add po din siya. So, dapat kung ma-add siya, maka-write ta og 2 times an expression plus 1. Tama ba? So, nanay plus 1 sa tumoy. So, ato na naibulag ang plus 1 daan, ba? So, we will have
4k.
so, factor out na, para maka-express tag 2k plus 1, an expression 2k plus 1, 2 times an expression plus 1, factor out na to this one with
Nakoy klase.
unsa may i-factor na to ani? 4 or 2 lang?
2, sir.
So, i-factor out lang na to ang 2. So, we will write 2
K plus
times
2k
2k squared plus
2k.
k. So, kada sa out na ba na siya?
odd Japan, sir.
Okay, 2 times an expression plus 1. Therefore, we can say n squared is odd. So, sunod na po, i-prove na to is the second direction na itong, okay, by conditional statement man ta. So, i-prove na to P implies Q. So, ato na pong i-prove that Q implies P. So, that is if n squared is odd,
odd.
then
N
n
is
is
odd.
odd. Ano? Okay. Unsa kaya assumption mo pa rin? Kasi maayo nga proof ani, direct proof or indirect proof? Okay, i-direct proof nato ni if n squared is odd, so makuha tag n squared is equal to 2 plus 1. So, gusto pakita ang square root ba? 2k plus 1. No? Kita root. At sa may mas maayo, i-indirect. Indirect na lang siguro. Sige, kung indirect proof nato, unsa may assumption nato ani. So let imo na to ning false no kung indirect atong conclusion. Dahil i-prove nato nga false ni siya. So, kung ato ning imong false ni n is odd, so unsa may atong assumption? Let n be kung ato ni siya ni false, n is odd. So, unsa ta assumption dayon?
Let n be even.
Okay, let n be even. So, if n is even, we can write n is equal to
2k.
2k. Okay, n is equal to 2k, where k is an integer. Ano? Okay. Ako naka-on din, pero gamay ka kung ito nga. Where k is an integer. Ano? So, what will be our n squared now? So, atong n squared will be 2
K plus 1.
At 2k squared.
Ah,
2k
2k
squared.
squared.
Diba? K n squared man. So, therefore, pila man ni siya?
4k squared.
4k squared. So, what is 4k? Even or odd?
Even.
So, saan na to siya pagbutang nga even siya? 2 times
2 taas.
2
So, dapat
times
2
2k
times yung expression.
squared.
Okay, 2k squared. Tama. Very good, no? So, therefore, we can say n squared is
Even.
even. So, thus, we can say, thus, if n squared is odd,
Then
then,
n is even. Ay, odd.
dili, balik na sa kuan. Balik na dire.
N is odd.
Okay, false. If giasun na to nga false, then false ni siya. Therefore, ang whole statement is
False.
Odd.
true.
Ay, true.
Therefore, n squared is odd, then n is
Odd.
okay. Na-prove na ba nato ang duha ka direction, class? The first direction, P implies Q. Proven na. Tama ba? Dahil sa second direction, so for by conditional statement, na-prove na pod. No? So therefore, na-prove na ba nato ang whole statement or wala pa? Na-prove naman nato in both direction. So, proven na ba nato ang statement or wala pa gyapon? Proven na. So, kung proven na, putang na din nato dire. End of
Dala na nga ba part, sir, mag-therefore?
Oo, diyan na. Pwede na ka mag-therefore. Actually, kanang thus, therefore na na. Conclusion na siya. Wait, ano na. Actually, ang pinaka-last line sa imong proof, pwede na ka-delay na kamoingog therefore, no, okay, sa practice, kung ato kag masteral, dili nila sila mistake nga therefore, money, this and this and that. As long as you can say nga prove na nimo, you can simply end place the end of argument symbol. No? Okay, question about proving by conditional statements. Napabay kung paan. Sige, last 3 na lang dayon ba. Okay, if you have questions, no, you can ask, no. Let's go back sa slides. Okay, you can also use this one. You can also answer all of this. Okay. Counter examples. Ano? Counter examples is used only when you are going to disprove a statement. No? Okay. Pag ang statement is true, dili ka pwede mo gamit og counter example. Ayara kung false ang statement. Parang imo i-disprove ang statement. So let's say, for example, this one. So every positive integer is a sum of squares of two integers. It's false. So how will you prove this one? What examples can you give that makes this statement false? Tingnan sa daw, every positive integer is a sum of squares of two integers. So, for this case, sa mga examples, no? Sige, positive integer, say positive 1. Ang positive 1 is 1 squared plus 0 squared. So, pwede. Let's say, positive 2. Positive 2 is 1 squared plus 1 squared. So, correct. So, 1 plus 1, 2. How about 3? Maka-express ba tag positive 3? It's equivalent to the sum of squares of two integers?
No, sir.
Wala, no? So, wala tayong ma-add, di ba? Kay, wala may, let's say, kung 0, wala mo po yung paparesin mo sa 0, na perfect square, na may equal sa 3. Kung 1 pod, wala, di ba? Kaya kung 1 plus 1, 1 squared plus 1 squared, it's 2. Kung 1 squared plus 2 squared is 5. So therefore, ang counter example nimo ani is 3. So you can say, since 3 cannot be expressed by the koan, so you can say, since positive 3 cannot be expressed as a sum of two squares, therefore, this statement is false. So, alala. Or you can say, you can add, let's say 7. Murag 7, wala, di ba? Let's say 7. So, since there are no positive integers that could add up to, there's no sum of squares that would, there's no perfect squares that would add up to 7. So therefore, this whole statement is false. So actually, dagan ka counter examples here. So inana lang ang pag-disprove sa statement. All you have to do is to uh, to show examples. Say for example, this one. Give a counter example of the statement. If n is an integer and n squared is divisible by 4, then n is divisible by 4. So when you give an example that makes this statement false, may mga example ani that makes this statement false.
Wag true man siya. Ay,
Two? Natin nag-mention two.
2n squared or 2 squared? Dito.
Okay, so 2 squared. Away. So 2. So 2 squared is, what is 2 squared?
4.
4. Ma-divide ba ang 4 sa 4?
Dili.
Yes.
Ay, divide 1.
Yes, no?
Yes, sir.
Pero ang 2 ma-divide sa 4, dili.
Dili, sir.
Dili, sir.
So therefore, this statement is false. Let's say for example, 6. For example, no, 6. 6 squared. Pila kaya ang 6 squared?
36.
36, sir.
36. Ang 36 ba ma-divide sa 4?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Pero ang 6 ma-divide sa 4?
No,
No.
sir.
Dili, no? So therefore, aning statement is a false statement. So ana lang ang pag-disprove. So kung gusto mo disprove, kung gusto niyo i-disprove, so all you have to do is to give them example. Mura na siya og mandaot kag tao ba? Diba? Alam-laman na nimo na siya isa ka istorya, ano? Libakaw na siya, murag tan-out mo ko mulain na dayon ba? Tinood ba na ka?
Balihon, bali, sir.
No? Grabe ninyo nga pag-workout sa inyong relasyon. Grabe nga pag-workout sa inyong relasyon, naguba lang tungkol sa change oil.
Dili, may ka-relate, sir. Wawi uyab.
Sorry ba? May nana ba? So, inana na ko pa kasayo ng pag-disprove sa usa ka statement. Kung kada siya is false. If false ang statement, all you have to do is to give examples. So, you can work out on these examples, no?
Exhaustive Proof. Natin ito ang exhaustive proofs and proof by cases. Magatag lang ko each of this, no? Saan pagbuhat sa exhaustive proof and proof by cases. Okay. This example, kanisa nga example is use will be proved using exhaustive proof, no? So when the exhaustive proof is you are going to try all the possibilities. You know? So when the exhaustive proof, just simply try all the possibilities. Let's say for example, this one. So, this one, no? So, prove that n plus 1 squared is lesser than or equal to 3 to the power of n if n is non-negative integer with n is lesser than or equal to 4. Now, kung wingon taog, so this kind of this problem can be proven using exhaustive proof. So when I say exhaustive proof is you are going to try all the possibilities, no? So for this case, non-negative so we are going to try all non-negative integer from what's that? N is lesser than or equal to 4. So what are those integers? So we are going to try. So non-negative. So we aman ta magsugod.
1,
1.
1. Ang 0 day.
0,
0 no kay non-negative man. So 0, 1,
1, 2,
2,
3,
3,
4.
4. So ato na sa i-try tanan. No? From 0 to 1, 2, 3, and 4. So kana lang atong say tawag ana i-try tanan. So if n is equal to 0,
0,
so if n is equal to 0, so ato i-try dia no. So we can say 0 plus
plus
1
1 squared
squared, is it
3,
greater than or equal to 3 to the power of 0? 0 plus 1 is 1 man, di ba?
0 plus 1, 1, sir.
yes sir,
1 squared,
1 squared, 1.
1. 3 to the power of 0,
1 sir,
1.
1. Is 1 lesser than or equal to 1?
yes sir,
Yes, sir.
Yes, no? So, correct siya. Correct. So, ato na pong i-try
Number 1.
if n is equal to 1. So, if n is equal to 1, so we have 1 plus 1 squared. Is it lesser
Lesser
than or
than.
equal to 3 to the power of 1?
1.
So, 1 plus 1,
2.
2.
2 sir,
2 squared,
4.
time pa.
4,
Correct ba kung problem? Wait lang
Dili
pa sa
makita, sir.
Sir, dili magkita.
Murag sayop galing niya akong problem class.
Sir, dili kayo makita ang imong kuan solution. Siguro siya nahiwi.
Kani.
Isbog gamay, sir.
Dili sa baliskad sa inyo. Baliskad ra ba sa kuha?
Dili,
dili
sir.
sir,
Ko ang kana
Pero,
lang 3
tumoy ra ako makita, sir.
Oh, nga na lang.
Kaning
Kana lang check.
Na-check.
okay. Ipin inyong screen sa akong kuan. Ano?
Sir,
Ay,
Ipin
live
ang akong camera sa inyong screen.
Nakapin na, sir.
Nakapin. Sige, i-center na lang ako. Kani.
Oh,
Na,
kana,
sir.
sir.
Kana, sir.
Okay. Welcome. Murag sayop akong problem class. Wait lang ah. So this is
4,
4. Is it lesser
lesser
than
than
or
or
equal
equal to 3,
false na siya? Check sa natin sa kuha na. If n is equal to 2, so 2 plus 1 squared
Squared.
lesser than or equal to
3.
3
3.
squared.
Power of 2.
So this is
2 plus 1 equals 3.
uh, 3 to the power of 2.
6.
So this is
9.
9
Joke.
lesser than or
Equal to
equal to 9.
9.
Tama
9.
ba nila?
Yes, sir.
Tama.
Check.
Tama. Dayon,
If n is equal
if
to 3,
n is equal to 3,
3 plus 1
3 plus 1 squared, is it lesser than or equal to 3
equal
plus
to 3.
4? So this is 4
4.
squared,
Squared 8.
le-
Yes, sir.
3
27.
27, 16 is
16.
lesser than
False.
Ay,
false.
sakto man.
Sorry, tama man.
Ah?
Kasi
Oo.
magagamay pa man siya.
Okay.
Sir.
This statement, murag sayop ang given ani class. Pero if you try to follow this statement, no? This statement or this conjecture is also false. Okay, nga, no? It is already false when we try at this point,
Number 1.
at number 1, no? So therefore, kung atong conclusion na to ani, this is false, no? Pero for the sake of kita mo gani, for the sake of exhaustive proof, ato na lang tiwason ni padulong sa 4, no?
Okay, sir.
So, itiwason padulong sa 4. So, if
N is
n is equal to 4, so 4 plus 1
1 squared.
squared, is it lesser than or equal to the 3 to the
3 to the
power?
power 4.
So, this is 5 squared, so that is 25. Is it lesser
25.
than or
25.
equal to 81?
81. Check Japon.
Uh, so if not, okay. So if not for n is equal to 1, true sana ni. Pero na may isa ka buok false, so na may isa ka buok false, we can say our conclusion here,
False.
therefore, pwede na natin ulit. The answer is false.
Sir, pag once na siya sayop nga isa, false na gid siya matik na.
Oo, na may isa ka buok false, di false sa gina sa tanan.
Ah,
Kung may isa ka book false, false sa gini sa tanan.
damay-damay na.
Oo, ana gina sa no. Okay, for the sake of exhaustive proof, ato lang i-try tanan. Pero when you are going to do exhaustive proof, dapat i-try gid mo na sa tanan. Try gid mo na sa tanan. Kung may isa ka book false, kung may isa ka book dili true, like let's say for example this one, kana siya. So kaning whole statement false gid na siya. So therefore, we can say that the whole conjecture is false. No?
Pero sir, what if sir kanang bitong nakaabot na ka sa false na nakakuha kag answer nga na false? Pwede na dili na magpadayon sir.
Pwede na dili ipadayon. Kay proof naman ito nga false, di ba? O kung na gani nga parang mali na ata to, dahon na gyud na siya, no?
Hindi na.
Dili na magpa
Give up
dili
na.
na magpa unsay tawagan na
Dili ko sir.
Magpakatanga.
magpakatanga sa pag-ibig nga alam ng mali na Parang, tama?
Ugot.
Wala nagkanta ni, kinsa na nagkanta na? Kanang
Moira,
sa
sir?
film ba? Dili, kanang, siya na nga banda. Alam ko mali na,
Ah,
pero di ko
this
kaya.
band. Sir, gibulagan ka, sir, no? Sige, lagi kang
Wala,
hugot, sir.
wala man. Wala man. Kailan ko joke good. Pero gibulagan. Okay, dito to sa proof by cases, no? This one is also kuan. This one is also an example of exhaustive proof. Exhaustive proof. You can try this one, no? You can try proof by cases. Okay, here. Ito. We'll just go on by proof by cases. Ay, sorry. Wala kong din. Naka-share akong screen. Wait lang. Okay, you can try this example, no? Naani sa inyong page. This is an example also of an exhaustive proof. So, not exceeding 100, so all you have to do is kuhaan lang kanang you are going to prove you are going to test all the numbers, all perfect squares. I guess murag
I joke.
uh, prove that only consecutive integer not exceeding 100 that are perfect powers are 8 and 9. And you can test all the numbers from 1 to 99. Laghan ba? For this case. Okay. Proof by cases. Direta. Proof by cases. Okay. Proof by cases is kuan. There's some statement that you have to prove them uh, for some condition. No? If all conditions ba are true. No? All
Oh
conditions
my
are true. So for example, this one, prove that if n is an integer, n squared is greater than or equal to n. Sorry. Okay, for this case, no? If n is an integer, n squared is greater than n. So when we are going to prove this one, so we are going to determine all the possible cases. No? So what are the possible cases for an integer here? So we can say case one. Uh, Case one, we can say pwede atong case number one nato here is n is a positive number or a non-negative number. Pwede, no? N squared bang good? So n squared is always positive.
Yes, sir.
Tama ba? N
Yes,
squared
sir.
is always positive. Then n is negative. So there are two possible cases here. So n could be positive or n could be negative. So there are two possible cases here. N could be positive or n could be negative. Or let us say i-include na to ang 0, n is a non-negative or n is uh, what's this? Negative, non-negative or negative. So atong possible cases here, case 1, we could say n is greater than or equal to 0. Then case 2 dayon, case 2 is n is lesser than 0. So kung n is greater than or equal to 0, so positive, no? Dayon, uh, case 2,
It's negative.
if n is lesser than 0, so negative yun. No? So we'll start with case 1. Case 1. So let n is greater than or equal to 0. No? Let n is greater than or equal to 0. Laon sa nato ni siya pag-prove. Sa nato ni pag-prove that n squared should be greater than or equal to n. So how are we going to prove that n squared is greater than or equal to n?
Let n for 2k. Ay, 2.
So kung greater than 0, saan man ni siya? So mag-proof by contradiction na lang siguro tani, no? Kaya kung mag-direct proof ta, parang medyo lisod ba? So kung indirect proof na to, proof by contradiction is i-false na to ni. So if we make that false, so n squared is lesser than n. Ano? So it show din nato nga dili siya pwede mahimong less than, no? Okay, proof by contradiction man ta. So this becomes okay. Class, kung atong i-apply ang principle of inequality, if n squared is lesser than n, pwede ba siya mahimong n squared minus n is lesser than 0?
Dili, sir. Ay, dili.
Pwede ba?
Ay, pwede.
Pwede, no? Kay kuan kaning sa tawag ani
Liko?
pwede siya by addition property of inequality, no? So putan ako diri, no? By addition property
Of
of
inequality.
inequality. Dili transpose sa basin transpose ini ibutang diha. Wala kay transpose, no? Lahi mo gud ang transpose sa math sa matrix man na. Nay transpose pero sa matrix mo gud na siya. Walang siguro para shortcut ba? Sige, transpose. Pero that is kung equation na siya equals addition property of equality. Pero kung inequality siya not equals, lesser than or equal, no? That is addition addition property of inequality, addition property of equality. Wala, dayon. So, ano to pag-show nga kung atong i-minus si n squared and n, dili siya mag-lesser than 0. Pwede man nato ni i-factor ba? Ma-factor ba ni siya, class?
Yes, sir.
Ma-factor, no? So, this would imply that n is
N minus 1
n minus 1
greater than
uh, greater
Minus.
than
Ay,
lesser than 0.
or lesser than n.
Okay. Positive man na siya nga number, no? A non-negative. Tama ba? Non-negative. Kung ang n is non-negative, non-negative times non-negative,
equals to positive.
kung non-negative times a non-negative, or let's say positive man na, no? Kung positive times a positive number,
Equal to
lesser than ba, 0 ba siya? Kasi non-negative man siya, di ba? Kung non-negative, so positive man eh. So positive times a positive number, is it lesser than 0? A positive number times a positive number less than 0 ba siya, class? Dili.
Dili, sir?
Dili, no? Kaya kung positive times positive, dapat positive.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So therefore, ako lang erase, no? We have here a contradiction. Anong contradiction siya? Contradiction siya since positive maning duha, di ba? If n is greater than 0, so kani positive. Kung 0 siya, let's say, except 0 lang siguro, no? Or, let's say, if positive, so positive times positive, so, kuhan siya kanang always positive siya. Greater than 0 siya, no? Contradiction since product of two positive integers must also be positive. Again, no? So, dapat positive siya because ang product sa positive integer must also be positive. Kaya ato man siyang i-define, anong positive man, sir? Nag-define man ta diri nga sa atong premise, it should be greater than or equal to 0. Di ba? Nag-define ta. So, positive siya dapat. Wait lang. Okay. So, nag-get sa to dito nga part. Ano ganitong kuan? Okay, nag-define the positive, so therefore, kani kay n is positive. N minus 1 should also be positive.
Positive.
No? So, positive is positive should also be a positive. So, not a contradiction. Therefore, case 1 is true. Diba? So, therefore, case 1 is true. Kasi, case 2 na punta. Case 2. So, we will let n be equal to lesser than 0. So, therefore, kung n is lesser than 0, sorry, if n is lesser than 0, then n is a negative number. Tama ba? So, kung
Yes, sir.
negative number siya, we can express n is equal to negative k. Or k is greater than or equal to or greater than 0. Diba? So, ma-express na to siya nga negative k. Where k, kung positive ang k, kung negative nimo ang k, so si n, negative siya. Diba? So, ano, no? So, also yun to, n squared ba? So, can we say, sakit to? Sakit to si n negative k. So, negative k squared, would that be greater to negative k? So, negative k squared is what? Positive k squared man ano? Positive k squared is greater than or equal to negative k.
Negative t.
Positive is greater than negative. Tama, Julie. Positive man,
True.
True.
no? So, true. So, therefore, we can
True
say case 2
is true.
is true. So, for both cases, na proven nato, so for both cases, na proven nato that the whole statement is true. So, therefore, ato na. So, since case 1 is true, case 2 is also true. So, end of proof lang. So, parang si proof by cases is parang generalization sa exhaustive proof. Ang exhaustive proof manggo is tagsa-tagsa ba, one by one. Si koan is parang group nato tong some cases murag some cases atong group and other cases to group. No? So mo na siyang na proof by cases na siya. Okay, question about proof by cases. Murag dili kaayo ning proof by cases no. Usually ang proof by cases kay dadto ni manggawas sa inyong higher math. Ma-encounter ninyo ni sa advanced calculus. Kung dili mo gani sa advanced calculus sa inyong abstract algebra. Dagan na sila diha. Number theory siguro na no? Pero dili kayo. Ang most common na type of proof magbalik-balik si direct proof and proof by contradiction. At least kana katulad ay si proof by mathematical induction. At least kanang tulo ma-master ninyo na ma-master ninyo yung tulo ka types of proof. Ma-master na ninyo ang proving. Okay, we will proceed with the last type of proof, no? Ay, wala na ako na-include. Let me open na lang sa inyong module. The last type of proof is kaning proof by principle of mathematical induction. I guess you are familiar with this one. Familiar ba mo ani? Proof by mathematical induction.
Sa module na, sir.
Nasa sa module actually. Ang module na lang
Number, sir.
module 8. Module 8, module 7. Sorry, it's module 6 pa. Module 6. Module 6. Nakapata sa P1 mo. Pero okay ra na class kaya murag kuan na kayo. Murag bright ra kayo ang nabuhat ani. Ipaspasan man mo niya. Sige, I will try module 6. No? Kaning exercises na lang. Wala po yung exercises. Dalaw-gaw. Sa inyo module na examples?
Wala po ni... Nag-send ka copy, sir?
Wala pa.
Module 6.
1 ang naa sa ako, sir.
Wala ka, sige, maghatag na lang ko ako material sa ani. Wala may klaro yung module. Wala example man. Nag-introduce sa topic. Sa, let me open sa akong book ha. Um, Jose.
Ran, module 6 ni Ran.
Yeah, module 6 naman. Okay, I'll just make use of the book, no? For exercise na lang. Okay. This one, no? Let us try to answer this one. We are going to prove that this whole statement is equal to a statement sa atong right side. Okay. For this kind of problem, or this kind of proving, what we are going to do here is we are going to use the principle of mathematical induction. So, first step, ang step sana is that you are going to show if the statement is true for some p sub k. So, if you are going to check if the statement is true for some p sub k, we say p sub k is for specific values of k, say p sub 1, p sub 2, and so on. No? Then, step 2, assume na yung ka uh, ayan na lang, P sub K, P sub I, no? P sub I. I is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and so on. Mag-try lang kag isa, let's say P sub 1. No? Then, step 2, assume nimo that the statement is true for P sub K. So, instead of N, assume nimo that the statement is true for P sub K. So that is step 2. So that will be your assumption. So step 3 dayon is show that P sub k plus 1 is correct. No? So you are going to show that P sub k plus 1 is correct. No? I'll just make it of another paper. So ganito yung given plus 1 squared plus 2 squared plus 3 squared and so on plus n squared
N
is equal to n times n plus 1 times 2k plus 1
six.
over 6. Oh, 6 guys. Over 6. So, step 1 sa to, no? So, let us try to prove the statement if it's correct for some p sub I. Pili lang kag isa ka value sa I. Let's say p sub 1, no? So, let's say p sub 1. So, kung p sub 1 is 1 squared ba, 1 squared is kanima, no?
Yes, sir.
Is it equal to 1 times 1 plus 1 times 2 times 1 plus 1 over 6. So 1 squared is equal to what is 1 times 2 times 2 times 1 is 1, di ba? Plus 1, that's 3 over 6. So 1 times 2 times 3 is equal to 6 man, ano? So 6 over 6. So 1 squared is equal to 1. 6 over 6 is equal to 1. So, tama ra ba siya, class?
Yes, sir.
No?
True.
True siya. Kung diskumpiyado mo, pwede na ito dugangan. We can say for P sub 2. Let us try to check for P sub 2, no? So, for P sub 2, let us say 1 squared plus 2 squared. Would that be equal to 2 times 2 plus 1 times 2 times 2 plus 1
Equal
over
over 6.
over 6. Oh, 6 days. Sorry.
6.
So 1 squared that is 1, 2 squared that is 4 equals. So that is 2 times 3 times
4 plus
4 plus
1.
1, that's 5, no?
Yes, sir.
Equal
Over
to
6.
6. So we have 5 is it equal to
2 times
30
3.
over 6. So 30 divided by 6, that is how much ba?
5.
5. So 5 is equal to 5.
Equal to 5. True Japon.
True siya. Ano? So, step 2 din ta. Step 2,
Nico, dili lagi sa
we will let P sub K is true. So we will let P sub K is true. So that is, so katong N, ilisa na nato og true. So just simply, that is, so 1 squared plus 2 squared plus 3 squared plus so on
Plus n
plus
squared.
2 squared. So ato lang ipulihan tong n of k. So k times k plus 1 plus 2k plus 1 all over 6. So atong atong gi-assume nga true na siya, no? So this is our assumption that kana nga whole statement is true. Kana siya nga whole statement is true. Then step 3, so we have to show that p sub k plus 1 is true. So we have to show that p sub k plus 1 is true. So ato ning pulihan tanan. So kaning left side atong pulihan og k plus 1. No? Kaning right side. So we are going to continue. So 1 squared plus 2 squared plus 3 squared plus so on plus k squared plus k plus 1 squared. Would that be equal to, so katong k dire pulihan na to og k plus 1. So first statement, this becomes k plus 1 times ang k na to himuon na tong k plus 1, no? So this becomes k plus 1 plus 1, diba? So kani atong k dire gipulihan tong k plus 1. So mo ni imong k plus 1 plus 1 times, so kaning k plus 1 dire ato na po nang pulihan o ano kaning k dire atong pulihan og k plus 1. So that becomes 2 times k plus 1 plus 1 all over 6. No? Okay. Pwede na to i-simplify sa daan ng left side. Kani. Pwede siguro, no? So atong i-simplify, no? So this becomes k plus 1 times k plus 1 plus 1, k plus 2 man, no? K plus 2 times, okay, unsa pila kaya ni?
2K plus 2.
2k plus 2 plus 1. So
3. 2K plus 3.
2k plus 3. 2k plus 3 all over. Okay. Okay, sorry. Ano, no? K plus 1, then k plus 2, then 2k plus 6. Okay. Let's go back dayon there is a left side. Okay. Now, we have known sa atong left side 1 plus 2, 1 squared plus 2 squared plus 3 squared plus so on plus k squared. Asa ganin ni siya equal? Equal ni siya sa hanapin. Kani, di ba? Equal ni siya, no? Ang padulong sa k, 1 padulong sa k, kani, no? Ang 1 padulong sa k, 1 squared plus so on plus k squared is equal sa kaning statement. K times k plus 1
times
times 2k plus 1. So, since equal man sa adto, kani siya atong i-substitute, no? Atong i-substitute atong previous. So this becomes now k k times k plus 1 times 2k plus 1 k times 2k plus 1 over 6 plus k plus 1
Ay,
squared.
times.
Ano? So kato lang padulong sa k atong i-substitute. Ang k plus 1 squared atong ipabilin. Diba? So you can choose class, no? You can expand both. Expand mo ang left, expand mo ang right. If equal ba sila? Or you can just as if nimo ang right side, we will try to show kaning left side nato will lead into kaning what the statement or the expression on our right side, no? So para sa yon, kay kung expand ka, it will take you time, no? Pasagdan lang nato ning right side. Di na to nahilabtan si right side. Ang atong panon, tandugon is kani atong left side, no? Ato i-simplify ni ang left side. Okay. Plus, dili ko magbungkag. So what are we going to do here is magkuan lang ta. Mag-factor out lang ta, no? Mangita ta og common factor. Unsay common factor kani nga statement k times k plus 1 plus 2k plus 1 over 6 and k plus 1 squared. Unsay common nilang duha? Pareha ba nga na ay k plus 1?
Yes, sir.
So pareha na ay k plus 1, no? So ipagawa sa to
Pareha,
ang k
sir.
plus 1. So ato ipagawa si k plus 1.
Times
So ang
k
mahitabo
plus
dayon
1.
we have k times 2k plus 1 over 6 plus, okay, kung sa may quandary, na yung mabilin isa ka k plus 1, ano, di ba? Pagawas man na to ang k plus 1. So, na isa ka k plus 1 mabilin. Tama ba?
Yes, sir.
Tama ba, class?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Equals k plus 1. Equals, okay. At dili na nato tandugo, no? Shortcut na lang nato. We will let this as our right hand side. So equals right hand side. So right hand side is kaning nga statement, no? Kaning nga expression. So, dili na nato tandugon. Kani lang atong left side atong tandugon. So simplify nato, no? Saan ko ito simplify? So pwede ba nato ni siya i-expand class? Okay, common factor nato is ano? LCD for this statement is 6. So this becomes k plus 1 times, pwede din mo na i-expand class, no? Kani? Expand nato ni. So that becomes 2k squared plus k over 6 plus 6 times k plus 1 over 6
Behave lang, ha.
equals our right hand side. Okay? So, kani nga case, pwede na to i-expand si 6, no? So you can say k plus 1 times 2k squared plus k plus 6k plus 1 all over 6 equals our right hand side. Okay? Then, simplify. We have k plus 1. This is 2k squared plus 7k
7k plus 1.
plus 1 all over 6 equals our right hand side. Okay. Unsa gani, pwede ba nato ni ma-factor ning 2k squared plus 7k plus 1, di ba? Unsa kay factor ana? That is isa. 6k plus 6, sorry, 6 na pala ito. Dapat 6 na na eh. Okay, my bad. Okay. 6 times 1 should be 6. So, 6k plus 6. And this should be 6 also.
2k plus 1.
2k squared plus 7k plus 6.
2k plus 6 eh.
2k plus 3.
6 times
So,
k plus 1.
factor niya is k plus 1. Factor ni Ani, that is 2k plus 3 plus k plus 2. Pwede rin natin ibutang ang over 6. Okay, recall na to atong right hand side, no? Atong right hand side, sakit atong right hand side, sorry. Wait. Okay, sakit atong right hand side na to. K plus 1 times k plus 2 times 2k plus 3
Over 6.
Pare-parehas na ba? Dili pa.
Dili. Ay, parehas na, sir.
Nabaylo lang ang atong kuan. Nabaylo lang si
Aduha.
2k plus 3 and k plus 2. Tama ba?
Yes, sir.
Nabaylo na, no? Pero ang kuan, say tawagan ni. Pero ang multiplication is commutative man. Commutative man ang multiplication, meaning pwede mo baylo-baylo, di ba? Ang plus star. So, i-change na natong plus star. So, that would imply that k plus 1
plus 1
times
plus 2
k plus 2
plus 2
times 2k plus 3
plus over
over 6 is just simply equal to k plus 1, k plus 2, then 2k plus 3 over 6. So, equal na. So, parehas na. So, na-prove na nga equal ang both sides. So, therefore, true na siya. So, pwede ra siya diya naka mag-end of proof, no? Pero kung gusto ka mag-therefore, okay na gyapon. So, you can say therefore 1 squared plus 2 squared plus 3 squared plus so on plus n squared is equal to n times n plus 1 times 2n plus 1 over 6. So, ana. So, that is the principle of mathematical induction. Medyo taas, no? Question class about principle of mathematical induction. So, kanina na inequality. Check na kung kaning na inequality, no? Kanina inequality. Pero kari inequality kaysa magawas ni siya sa inyong advanced advanced calculus.
Liko, dili lagyan ng ito ba?
Factoring.
Wala ka muna ng
Isa. N is integer. Okay, let us ano kaning inequality medyo libog ng inequality. This kind of problem, you will encounter this again sa inyong advanced calculus. Either advanced calculus or number theory. No? So let us try to prove that 3 to the power of n is lesser than n factorial, for n is an integer where n is greater than 6. So we have to show some muna for some p sub k, p sub I. So specific values, ano? I-define man niya dere, it's greater than 6. It should be greater than 6. So what are the numbers that are greater than 6?
7.
7. Let us say show that P7 is true. So ato sa ano? So we will check. So 3 to the power of 7, is it lesser than 7 factorial? So what is 3 to the power of 7? 3 to the power of 7 is on mana 81 times 3,
2,187.
pila? 1,000.
2,187.
Okay, 2,187. Paspasan ninyo eh. 7 factorial. 7 factorial is 7 times 6 times 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. That's how much?
5,040.
5,040. So true, ano? So true. Okay, you can check for some more. Pwede na, actually ang one example is enough, no? Okay. So assume na to. So we will let P sub k is true. That is 3 to the power of k is lesser than k factorial. Ano? So ato nang i-assume that true, that is 3 sub k is lesser than k factorial. So let us show that p sub k plus 1 is true. So saan na to pag-show karon na p sub k plus 1 is true. So we have here 3 to the power of k plus 1. Is it really lesser than k plus 1 factorial? No? Is 3 to the power of k plus 1, is it really lesser than k plus 1 factorial? Okay. Class, we know kani si 3 to the power of k plus 1, di ba equal na siya, kung ato i-recall sa kuan, i-recall na to inyo algebra, di ba pwede man na siya equal to 3 times 3 to the power of k? Pwede, no? Tama ba? Dayon, si k plus 1, si k plus 1 factorial is namay sa inyong wala pa mo na murag na naman mo siguro mo niya sa algebra. Nakagi na ba mong stat?
Yes, sir.
Di ba ang k plus 1 factorial that is the same as k plus 1 times k factorial. Tama, no? Tama ba? Si k plus 1 factorial is just simply the same as k plus 1 times k factorial. Kaya naman na siya, oh. K plus 1 times k plus times k minus 1 times k minus 2 times so on times 4 times 5 times 3 times 2 times 1. So that is why k plus 1 factorial is just simply equal to k plus 1 times k factorial. Okay, kani ato lang stop. So kani is here. Wait. Kani from k padalong 2 times 1, that is k factorial. So i-include nimo k plus 1. So mo na siya. So mo ni siya. So that is why si k plus 1 factorial is just simply equal to k times 1 times k factorial. Okay? Okay, if k is greater than 6, kinsa may mas dako sa duha?
K.
Kinsa may mas dako sa duha? Si 3 or si k plus 1? Since k is greater than 6, oh wait. Kinsa may mas dako sa duha? Si 3 or si k plus 1? Diba kay nag-assume ka nga n is greater than 6 or you could say k is greater than 6. So,
K
kinsa
plus
man
1.
okay, mas dako si k plus 1. Tama ba? Dayon sa 3 to the power of k and k factorial, kinsa gani mas dako sa duha? Based sa atong assumption
K
atong
factorial.
okay, mas dako si k factorial. Tama ba? Since mas dako si k plus 1 kay kang 3, dayon mas dako si 3 to the power of k, mas dako si k factorial kang 3 to the power of k. So therefore, proven na nato, no? Proven nato that 3 times 3 to the power of k, 3 times 3 to the power of k is greater than k times, sorry, k plus 1 times k factorial. Di ba? So, okay, mas dako man si 3 kay kang k plus 1 and si 3 to the, mas dako si k factorial, mas dako si k factorial then 3 to the power of k. So, therefore, kani nga statement holds true. So, si 3, which is mas gamay sa k plus 1, si 3 to the power of k, mas gamay sa k factorial. So, therefore, kung ato ni i-multiply ang duha, o kanang duha, kani mas gamay ani. No? Kani mas gamay ani. Dayon sa based atong previous nga equation nga kani siya is equal to ani, dayon Anisha is equal to Ani. Therefore, we can say that 3 to the power of k plus 1 is lesser than k plus 1 factorial. No? So dire, question mark pa, dili pa ta sure, pero dire, sure na ta. So therefore, that is the end. Therefore, katong statement ganina, itong given, 3 to the power of n lesser than n factorial for n is greater than 6 is a true statement. So true statement. So that's it. Any question about the principle of mathematical induction? Naay question? Okay, ala. Okay, question on the mathematical induction. So I guess I have introduced all the methods of proof, no? So from the direct proof to principles of mathematical induction. So any questions? Okay. Um, if there are some questions, no, I know some of you uh, tried to answer some exercises I posted, no. Kung naay parang feel niyo dead and you may comment your questions dito sa kung ano katong bitong exercises na akong gi-post. You may comment your questions there, no. Okay, shall we? Wala na questions. Okay, include na ko ni sa exam, ha. Also, then next week, uh, just tell your classmates na lang po also that we are going to have a long quiz for methods of proof and about sets on Thursday. So, ano lang. Okay, sige. Shall we call this a day? Ako i-send sa inyo ang record about this so para at least maka-review mo gamay.
Eko. Baon na ka rin.
Okay, I guess that's it. Sige, ako na i-stop ang akong record, ha. Okay lang. Stop record.